Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day two of TechCon. I hope all of you enjoyed day one. I hope you found inspiration. And to top it up, today we have day two, and we have this amazing fireside chat with Ankur. And if you were not inspired yesterday, I promise you today you will through this fireside chat, and that's what Ankur does for a living, right? Inspire people around him. So, welcome, Ankur. Good morning. How are you doing?
Very well, Ashutosh. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, Ankur. Before we start and I do an introduction of Ankur, I just wanna do one very quick PSA public service announcement. Ankur and I will be in a dialogue for next 30-40 minutes. And as you are going through it, if you have questions, there's a Q&A feature on the platform. Please put the questions there, and then Ankur and I will do our best to answer those questions, right? So that's one PSA, but welcome, Ankur, once again. And I'll try and introduce you. I think Ankur has such an impressive background and has done so much that it's difficult, but I'll try and do my best. So, Ankur is an internet entrepreneur based out of India and is one of the India's top content creators. He's also a best-selling author and conducts courses online as an educator. In his spare time, he loves to mentor entrepreneurs and act as an angel investor. Presently, Ankur splits his time as a content creator, where he manages a community of 5 million plus followers across YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and an online educator, where he conducts courses on entrepreneurship, career management, and personal growth. Over 150,000 plus students have attended his courses so far. And as a mentor investor to startups, where he loves spending time with first-time entrepreneurs, hoping he can help them not make the same mistakes he made when he started up. He's also a best-selling author. His first book, Do Epic Shit, released in 2021 and hit number one in India on the Nielsen's bestsellers list. I myself witnessed that when I was at the airport this week. I was traveling and Ankur was all over the place in the Delhi airport. So congratulations on that, Ankur. Previously, Ankur founded Nearby.com, India's number one lifestyle app. Prior to this, Ankur was the founding CEO of Groupon India business in 2011 and then acted as a country CEO from 2011 to 2015 and head of Groupon APAC from 2013 to 2015. Ankur was part of Fortune magazine's 40 under 40 list for India, LinkedIn India's top voice for 2018, 2019, and 2020. LinkedIn India Spotlight list, India's top executives under 40 by Business Today. So as I said, like we can go on. Ankur is so distinguished. He has done so many great things in his life. But Ankur, it's once again, it's a pleasure to have you here today. And for the people who are attending this, it will be great to hear from you, learn from your this epic journey, and and see how we can take some of those inspirations and lessons from your journey to make our journey better. So once again, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the very, very warm introduction. I think we should mandate sticking to introductions for less than 10 seconds so that we reduce the embarrassment at the other side. I
No,
don't
you should be very
like, there's a tweet, Ashutosh, recently, which was so fascinating. Somebody asked, hey, what do you do when everybody else is singing happy birthday to you? And that was what I was reminded of while I was going through this introduction. It's like, what is one supposed to do when someone's introducing oneself? Thank you so much again. It's a pleasure to be amongst TechCon. A very warm welcome to everybody who's joining in. Good morning to everybody from India and everybody from outside, depending on your time zones. I hope you're having a great start to the weekend.
Fantastic. I'll tell you what you should do when other people are singing happy birthday. I think just pray to God that you never celebrate your birthday again. I'm an introvert and I absolutely don't like when people do that. But anyways, coming back to the topic, and it's great to be here. Ankur, what I'm going to do is before we get into the little bit of serious end of the business, we want to get to know you a little better. And of course, we have talked through your professional achievements, but let's get to know a little bit about what you do every day or what are kind of things you like, right? So I'm gonna do a rapid fire. You can take you long answers are welcome. You can take your time to elaborate, but my questions will be very, very short. Okay, ready? First one.
I am.
Okay, are you a morning person or night owl?
I'm a morning person.
Fantastic. We are not similar there. That's great to know. Books, Kindle, or podcasts?
Kindle first, followed by books.
Kindle first, followed by books. Okay. I kind of myself keep moving between both of them. I can't make up my mind. Okay. One trait uh, for when you look for when hiring a new person. One thing which is really important for you.
Curiosity. That is absolutely the biggest thing for me.
Lovely. Favorite travel destination?
Oh, in any place new, I wouldn't want to go to the same place again.
Okay, okay. I mean, that's what we are trying to do this year as families and new experiences. But we always love our favorite places and I keep going back to it. Of course, your book is doing so well, and I got myself a copy yesterday night at Delhi Airport. So, who is your favorite author?
I follow favorite books, Ashutosh, not favorite authors, because I think that's too much of pressure on one person. But if I had to pick one, then it will be Nassim Taleb.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. How do you unwind?
By doing the things that I do, I'm perpetually unwinding. I don't do anything that stresses me out or I feel the need to relax outside of the zone that I'm spending my time on.
And not part of the questions which I wanted to ask, but like because last 2 years have been very different. Has that changed anything, like from unwind? Because in the professional community, we are all working very hard, continuously on these Zoom calls.
Yeah.
So has anything changed from that perspective for you?
I think we all got to appreciate the family time that we got, whether it was forced upon or not by design. And at least I can speak for myself. I love that, and I wouldn't want to change anything about that going forward, because that's something that was precious. And frankly, I hadn't done a great job of experiencing it as much as I did in the last 2 years.
It's a common theme. I used to be always on the planes before the pandemic. Now we had 3 meets together. This week I was traveling and my boys were not very happy about it. Like I got so many calls. So I completely can relate to it. Okay, back to you. Most used mobile application.
WhatsApp. No, Google Calendar.
I thought there should be a correct answer there, but I won't force you into it. I was like, okay, LinkedIn. Just kidding. Okay, what do you look up to? A mentor or a guru? Or who do you look up to? Like mentor and
Se-
guru kind of same
yeah,
thing.
several people. Again, I don't put the responsibility of somebody being the know-it-all for me, because that's being unfair on someone. So I have multiple mentors, most of whom don't not even know me, because I'm like that guru shishya from a distance, and I'm the Iklavya sucking whatever Guru Dronacharya from a distance is teaching and imbibing, and that's how I operate. So I love observing people and gathering whatever best I can from them.
Amazing. And the last of the rapid fire round, best career advice you ever received.
Oh, this is so dear to me, Ashutosh. This was my first manager in my consulting job right out of business school. And if you'll allow me, I'll give you a slightly longer answer, because I think the context is
Absolutely.
wonderful. So I hated accounting in business school. And I did not know for the love of God why accounting exists as a subject. And I was terrible at it, horrible at it. And as luck would have it, my first project in consulting was with a real estate company, designing the entire business plan for a very mega project that they were about to launch. And that included balance sheet, cash flow statements, all of those things that I dreaded. And I did a horrible job at that. I I was aware I was making mistakes, but I was like, hey, my manager will just review those mistakes and they will tell me what those are. I will correct it and life will be okay. And that's what I thought the relationship between the manager and the team member was. And I remember distinctly this one review call where the manager was like, look, you send me your work, it's getting better, but I don't know. So what I have to do is spend time reviewing your work all over to ensure that it's error-free. And that is not the best use of my time. And that is when he gave me the best career advice I've ever got. He said, Ankur, if I can't trust you, it doesn't matter how smart you are. And that hit me like a bolt of lightning. And I was like, oh my God, it makes so much of sense. And since then, I've been such a passionate admirer, believer, endorser of trust as a mechanism in everything that we do, not just professionally, but personally as well. And everything in my life is centered around, am I generating trust? And am I able to trust people so that I draw the best from them?
Brilliant. It's amazing. I think we as a platform, we as a community, we as a company are very centered on the trust equation. So I can't disagree with you here at all. I mean, I completely relate to it. I think as we work professionally, and I think trust specifically in the virtual environment where we are working, where we don't get to see our teams, where we don't get to see it, our leaders, it's even further important, right? So I think communicating, making sure your priorities are common, your priorities are adjusted. I think it's so important, right? So
So true.
brilliant. Okay, so we know a little bit of Ankur now. I mean, I won't claim we know everything, but absolutely we know a little more about you. And I think Ankur, as I was thinking about your professional journey, as we talked about your professional journey in the introduction, you have worn multiple hats. It's been like I feel like it's an amazing journey in a way from experience perspective. You've done so many different things. But one of the things which I wanted to ask you is career, the way we traditionally visualize our careers, and passion. Are they two different things, or they are interconnected? How do you visualize that when you look back at your journey, or when you even think about the future?
That's a great question to start with, Ashutosh. I believe most of us are living our lives in a way where our careers and our passions are disconnected. And that's unfortunate because that means that we will have to spend a far greater effort in making our careers work for us. And we will feel far more disillusioned because we see that our passion is not something that can become our career as well. And as we're always told, the best place to be is when your passion ultimately also becomes your career. I think where most of us make a mistake, and I was guilty of that as well, is try to get to that spot very early in life. Especially in the Indian context, there is this race to settle and settle very fast because no, that's what our parents keep telling us, the society keeps telling us, jaldi jaldi padhai khatam karo, jaldi jaldi naukri le lo, jaldi jaldi shadi kar lo, and everything is around this deadline, this timeline that we have to adhere to, which is defined by the world. So lo and behold, we think that passion is something that we have to find and find very quickly. And if we don't, then we just have to settle with the career we have. And I stand here as a living example of saying that that's not true. It isn't. And I know of so many people who aren't. I'm 42 years of age, and I have changed my career/profession at least 4 times. And I've made these twists and turns which seemingly look very risky, but had this logical flow, at least in my head, of why I was doing it. And I stand here as a survivor, having lived through all of that and still have a story to tell. And I would urge everybody who's listening in to look at their careers the same way, irrespective of where you are, irrespective of who you are, where you work. Don't look at yourself as just that entity for the rest of your life. Especially if you are a technologist, which I assume will be most of the audience today, you have to recognize that technology is changing at such a rapid pace that it'll be foolish for you to absorb an identity and make it so for the next 40, 50 years. It's not going to happen. What you instead want to do is you want to be at a place where technology is a way of living and not a role definition. It is a place where every single year, quarter, 2 years, there is a significant shift in how they are viewing technology, and they then take you along in that journey. And then that ultimately becomes what you would want to call your passion. So the best thing will be, I'm passionate about technology, but my career today is that of a software engineer. Tomorrow is that of a designer. Day after is that of a UXer. day after is that of a data analyst, day after that is of a Web3 developer. You could be whosoever you wish to be, as long as your passion and your career is somewhat aligned. So for me, it isn't distinct, and it is a journey that one needs to undertake to make it the same.
Can't agree. I mean, like, cannot disagree with this. I personally have experienced that these are not two different things. They're very interrelated. And everything, when I look back at my career, every time I've been super successful is when these things have really, really overlapped. Something which I wanted to do and I'm passionate about, and I'm doing it every day. And that's when you enjoy the most. One thing also I'll add, if you allow me, is and even for the technologists, I think technology is going to play a key part of our lives forward. I think as people are thinking about, you should also marry passion with purpose. I
Yes.
think that purpose is also important, right? I think you can say purpose is part of the passion, but I specifically want to call out like a lot of companies, a lot of jobs when they're purposeful, people are more passionate about what they're doing. If people want to take a note of that, that would be awesome as well. Just continuing on this passion bit, I feel the current ecosystem of startups around us is a manifestation of that being stuck somewhere, and then now suddenly there's a burst of energy saying, hey, I'm passionate about X and I'm going to go do it, right? So, and that's amazing for country, and that's amazing for people, for technologists. They can join some of these companies. They have amazing visions and purposes, and they're really helping people around. But question to you, what advice would you like to give to the budding entrepreneurs as they set out on this journey, or the people who are listening who want to join these companies? What is one advice we give to these people?
If you'll allow, I'll give two. One,
Sure.
because it's the heat of the moment, and because of so much exposure that we have had to the startup community through media, through television shows now, there is this, as you rightly pointed out, Ashutosh, wave of exuberance that we are witnessing in this country, and it's fascinating. At the same time, it's also very important, as someone who's witnessed this industry for the last 12 years up close, to understand that as an entrepreneur, your goal is to make your customers love your product so much that they're willing to pay for it. Your goal is not to raise money. Your goal is not to get featured in the media. Your goal is not to have the best office. Your goal is not to have the best perks. Your goal is not to have the biggest dollars doled out and to get covered because that's what you stand for.
Mhm.
All of those are in some way mini steps or transitionary steps towards the larger goal. And that's just one: make your customers love your product so much that they're willing to pay for it. And that then creates this very clear, authentic, honest advice that is, please don't think of funding as a success. Funding, if anything, is a responsibility. It's a responsibility because you've raised money from somebody else, and you now have a fiduciary responsibility to generate a return for them. And the only way you can do that is to make your customers love your product so much that they pay for it. While you're doing that, the second piece that I would love for you to consider, which I'm sure you are already taken care of from the market side, the product side, the marketing side, and all of those things that we get spoken and hearing of quite often. The one often ignored thing that I've realized, particularly in the Indian context, is the essence of team building and the culture around which you build the team. Because that is easily something you believe you can push for later or outsource it to some other function and not take on direct responsibility for. And that will be a mistake. It could be even suicidal. You don't want to make that mistake. At the end of it, every single thing that you do as a founder, every single thing that the team does as an unwritten rule becomes part of the culture and the way things get done. And it becomes really hard to change it. It becomes really hard to even define it. People just feel it every single day of their time working in the organization. You do want to then spend time on it. And that starts with getting the right kind of people who are aligned with the kind of culture that you want to build and you would want to stand up for. And if you make a mistake there, giving precedence to skills as against values, to the experience the individual comes in with as against how authentic that individual is towards their purpose, you will run into rough weather. And that's coming in from somebody who's learned it the hard way. So take it for what it's worth. These two things would be my advice. Don't think of funding as a success. It's just a means to an eventual end. And please pay attention to team building and culture from day one, because it gets really hard to change that later on. And it almost always becomes the defining reason of how things are done at your place.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, closer to home, I think I joined LinkedIn in 2013, and we were a startup at that point in time, and culture was so important, right? And I think, as you rightly said, people focus on funding, people focus on product market fit, which are all important. But one thing which lives on and which helps you get to your goals and vision is the culture and the shared vision you build with your employees or with your teams. I remember very distinctly Jeff Reno was our last CEO before Ryan. He was so passionate about shared vision and building a culture of the company that even you go to any LinkedIn office anywhere in the world, it sounds similar, and that's very very important. When I talk to the founders of the CEOs of the startups, I think I usually ask the question saying, can you define your culture? What is your cultural tenet? What are the principles you're following? And most of the times people struggle with that answer because they're not focused on that, right? So couldn't agree more. And I think this is an amazing advice to all the people, right? Picking up a little bit different topic, right? Again, as I look back in your journey, you have made a lot of changes, you have pivoted in different directions, and of course now you're successful, and you can definitely say all of those were either good decisions or I reached to the point where I wanted to. But when you look back, or when you think about the journey, what was the riskiest thing you have done in life? What was one of those most riskiest pivots, which if would have gone south, would have been difficult? Or is there something like the most riskiest thing? Let me
Yeah,
ask that.
yeah. I think the second part of your question gave up the answer. It's only in hindsight that we realize, oh my God, this was so risky. How did I even pull it off? And if I were asked this question, I often go back to my decision of dropping out of my PhD program in the US and coming back to India, because that was a decision that I frankly, when I look back at, I was like, what was I thinking? Like, what was the basis for me to even make that decision? Of course, I can rationalize it now through several intellectual means and methods. But back then, at the age of 24, I was a PhD student doing exactly what I wanted to do in a university which was great, on a 100% scholarship, top of my class, on a fast track program to complete the PhD. Everything that I had imagined my life to be was happening the way that I had imagined it to be. And yet when I found myself not so happy doing it, and it struck me that what you're good at and what makes you happy could be two entirely different things, it was just a very obvious choice to me that I didn't want to do it any further. And I came back to India with no plan, no goal, no direction. It's not that anything was waiting for me here. We come from a very humble background. We were under tremendous financial debt at that point of time. So I had to literally start my life all over again at the age of 24. And I'm so glad that it worked out for me. There was enough and more reason why it wouldn't have, but I'm just lucky. And I stand here as a survivor with immense survivorship bias saying, hey, it worked out. I'm not necessarily recommending it, but I'm saying that I'm one of the lucky few for whom it just turned out to be so well, and I'm so glad for that. So that would be the riskiest thing that I did.
Yeah, interesting. Again, a lot of common points between our journey in a way. The reason I also twisted the question saying, is there something the riskiest thing? Because all of the people on this call, including you, me, we have the credentials, we are done through the education, we are doing good things in life, and one wrong move, a lot of people believe, and a lot of people shy away from making changes into their life because of that thing. Saying one wrong move will all be over. It doesn't work like that, right? There is always a way to come back. There's always to get back, and so I think that's a great thing what you shared, and hopefully people who are like thinking about things, about who want to do things, but just like, oh, I can't fail, or this thing can go south. Hopefully that they will think about that again today. Okay, as expected, while you work from home or when you're doing these things on home, I'm having a little bit of tech issues. So to all people listening in, Ankur, just give me 2 minutes. Let me switch my network
Sure.
because you are blurring a little, at least on my side. So I don't want to give a. So just 2 minutes, guys. Bear with me. I should be back in exactly 2 minutes. Okay. How is it, Ankur? Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can. It's fit is good. Can you as well?
Awesome. It's all good. Okay. So with that little bit of tech break in the middle, let's also shift the conversation a little more on something slightly different topics. So I think social media is little bit that's like it drives a lot of things in our lives, and as we think about building our own brands, both from a personal brand, professional brand, I think social media and that brand building is overlapping a lot more, right? So, from a growing one's own career perspective, what do you think is the importance of building your own brand and social media? How do they intertwine together? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah. Um, it's a very pertinent question that you ask because today it feels almost necessary to have a personal brand presence online. And I'm here almost as a hypocrite saying it's not true. You don't need to have a personal brand online because whether you like it or not, you're already a brand. There are people who think of you in a certain way. Your reputation precedes you, whether at the workplace, whether in your personal life. And that then determines the interactions that you have with people who may not even know of you because they do have an impression of you basis how you have interacted with others before them. And that means the only difference between somebody who is online and somebody who's you is the number of people that you are reaching out to. But everything else is exactly the same. And I'd argue that it is not necessarily everyone's inherent self to be out there in front of thousands of people. And if it is not, don't do it. Don't become somebody else in order to show that you can do it, because that is you playing a game whose rules have been set by somebody else. You ought to, in your
Mhm.
life, play the game whose rules have been set by you, because then you are in the best position to win the game. And that means a very strong level of awareness on what is it that you're good at and not. What is the authentic you? And do those things well, because then you require the least amount of motivation to do them. And then number three, everybody has a different game to play. So stop comparing yourself with somebody else's game if they are entirely two different things. So I think everything that you do in your life is going to create a brand of you, whether you like it or not. The choice becomes, what do you want the brand to stand for? And that is a question that everybody should answer. But the way you build that brand and in front of how many people you wish to bring that brand is a question that you have to ask
Mhm.
yourself, and make sure that you're never lying and definitely not becoming somebody else to answer that question. And that would be my absolute advice.
Yeah, I think bringing your true self to everything you do is the most important thing, and we at LinkedIn we believe in that strongly, right? So I think if you are trying to build a brand and you are not being yourself, the unauthenticity will show somewhere, as we were saying, right? If you are not that person, don't try and do that, do things which you don't really can relate to, right? So completely get. But just the last part of it is like social media does play a role these days, right? Like even if I'm not trying to do things which I am not standing up for, but like social media does play a role. So
It
how do
it
you
does.
yeah.
It does, and you can't deny it. So I'll be happy to, because I've benefited so much from being on LinkedIn, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my journey of almost nearly now 10 years now of creating content on LinkedIn. I remember when I started creating content on LinkedIn, the big difference between what I do today as against what I did back then was, back then my purpose of creating LinkedIn was just one thing. to attract the best kind of talent that vibes with our kind of culture. That was it. We were a startup which did not have the top dollars to pay, did not have a brand that everybody knew of, did not have the fanciest place that people would love to show off on social media and so on. So we had to do something different to stand out from the entire crowd that was there as a competition. And there were two ways. One is go through these intermediaries, which are whatever, the media and the press and all those nice, happy things, the hiring agencies. But that felt like somebody else had control over the narrative. And I felt that there was a strong narrative we had that we wanted to get in front of our audience directly and not have anybody else represent us in that manner. So I took on that ownership as the founder, as the CEO. I became the spokesperson, and I was happy to play that role. And all that we did was just share what was it working at Nearby, what were the pitfalls of it, what were the great high points of it, what were the mistakes we made. Everything was authentic. Everything was as honest as we could make it. And that worked like magic. It worked so well for so many years. And around 2017, when LinkedIn launched its video product in India, and that's, by the way, a great story, Ashutosh, that I will tell you someday apart. And that was my first interaction with Jeff Weiner without interacting with him. But I got then hooked onto the video feature, and that was just a game changer because we moved from text to video, and suddenly the kind of generation that we were speaking to were now listening and hearing from us in the medium that they wish to engage with. And that just completely changed the course. So social media plays a very important part if you use it the right way and not necessarily for yourself. So I wasn't creating a personal brand out there. What I was doing for almost 5 years was creating an identity as an employer. And it was the employer brand that I was trying to create using my name as a placeholder. And that worked brilliantly. And if you're very clear on why you're doing something, then automatically the motivation to do it and the objective of doing that becomes clearer.
Amazing. I think I would love to hear that Jeff story whenever we meet in Gurgaon, whenever we get a chance. But you absolutely hit the nail on the head, right? See, I think I spend, of course, I work for LinkedIn. I spend tons of time on the platform. I talk to many people. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by the idea of creating the brand. And I think, as you rightly said, you are the brand. You already have a brand. Like how you want to further build on it is totally up to you. And I even go to extent of saying you don't have to create stuff in a way when you're asking a question or you're commenting. That itself, you're leaving some trace behind of who you are. And so I think you don't have to create that post which is full of leadership lessons or don't get overwhelmed. Like these are simple things. There, social media now provides everybody an opportunity to really comment, connect with people, and get learn, get the knowledge from other people, right? So very interesting times we are living in. We have options for many different ways to do this, right? So fantastic. Let's go into a topic which is very close to my heart, and that's LinkedIn as well, and I'm sure you as well, which is diversity and inclusion. And at LinkedIn, we also talk about belonging. So diversity, inclusion, belonging, right? The belonging plays a very important role for employees to feel connected to the bigger overall vision. It's one of the top priorities for organizations across now, right? Like I think there is this huge conversations happening on it. Employees are demanding it. Employees are thinking about it, right? So from a lens of an entrepreneur, how can organization today create a gender inclusive environment?
It's a great question, Ashutosh. And I think I want to start with showcasing or at least stressing upon the need for gender inclusion, because here's the truth. And we figured this out, I'm glad, very early in our journey at Groupon and Nearby, where we're like, hey, we're a B2C company. We're building a product that Indian consumers are going to use day in and day out. At least the hope is that. And that is going to be the world that we witness outside. That world is represented almost equally by men and women. So how is it that the ones making the product are not going to have the same representation? That's just stupid. Why would you not have exactly the same share of inclusion or of diversity or of representation that you're building for within the team itself. Because if you're not doing that, then you are clearly not seeing the signs of a majority of your customers who are going to react to your product the same way that you would want them to. And it becomes really hard for a technology company, particularly in India, to build what I would call a equal gender ratio profile, because we don't have as many women engineers as we would want. It becomes harder for them because they make life choices. And then it just becomes this machinery that you have to work towards. So there were a few things that we did, and I'm glad that we worked on that. Number one, as a principal and as someone that I felt was accountable towards it, we released our gender diversity metrics every single year. And this was the percentage of women force that we had in the entire team, and then particularly technology. We also released the pay gap, if it existed, across levels. And we had that segregated around gender. And this was my way of building in public and saying, hey, we're not yet there, but I would love for you to make me accountable for getting there. And I promised to get there. And we did. When I left Nearby, we were at 38% women across the company, 35% in technology, which frankly was a big change for us because we started from almost 14% 4 years back, and zero pay gap. There shouldn't be any. And we had done everything that we had to get to that point across levels. In fact, the senior the levels went, for some weird reason, which we tried to also look into, women were starting to get paid more than men, but there was no design as such in the system as such. And then the second thing that we did, which was very important, is in the input itself, which is the hiring process, you have to eliminate all possible biases. So I'm proud of the hiring process that we had at Nearby because it's very distinct. It helped us hire the best talent in a very unorthodox way. And that meant we did not look at the resume of the individual until almost 3 rounds of evaluation. So there was no sense of the name, no sense of their qualification, no sense of their even experience. We were just trying to get to know the person. We were trying to get to know of them as an individual. What are their choices in life, their value systems? How do they look at things? And that was our basis of saying, hey, does this vibe with our culture or not? And that's all that we were answering. And we realized that that was such a great way of reducing the bias in what could be there, even unknowingly. And that helped us a lot. And then the third that we did was we began to measure what was the success of all of this work, whether having a gender equal workforce result in something which is quantifiable at a company level, whether it's shareholder equity, whether it's revenue, whether it's growth. And as we did, we had several metrics working towards it. And we had, of course, the company outcomes attached to it. We started to do some very serious regression analysis to figure, and we did realize that our move towards having a gender neutral workforce played almost a 38% contribution, which was the single biggest, by the way, contributor as a standalone towards the company growth. While it wasn't the majority one, it was still standalone, the biggest contributor. And that blew my mind because frankly, I did not expect that. I genuinely did not. So I now remain such a passionate spokesperson for the fact that if you're building for an audience that in the real world is gender neutral, you ought to have that same representation within the workforce as well.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I had really goosebumps because we kind of similar kind of thinking in a way. And I personally sometimes, and I've spent like 22 years in professional workforce, worked across countries, sometimes get really irritated when I think back and saying why there has to be a bias and why things have to be different, why we need to even consciously work on it. But what we realize that as a company as well, there's so many unconscious bias in our heads when the intent is not there. or intent is not to do something wrong, but by design we work towards that, right? And that's where we proactively work as a company a lot on removing those unconscious biases, because that's when things start seamlessly flowing, right? It doesn't feel like artificial. It doesn't feel like I have to be pushed. And then there are a few things you have to push, like you said, as publishing metrics, just being very accountable and responsible to our employees, to the world outside, right? So I think we as a company, we are very, very focused on gender diversity, making sure that we have fantastic women representation. And I think we have a lot of programs running across, like return in. We even introduced a feature in our profile where you can say you took a career break for whatever reason, right? And that gives you the, like, at least mentally you feel confident that yes, it is recognized that you can take a career break, right? So we are thinking it from all angles and dimensions, but there is still a long way for us as a professional community across the world to be more uniform across the two genders, right? Like on multiple genders, right? It's not about. I don't think so. We have reached to the end of the journey, right? The conversation is just starting. We need to execute on it, and from an execution angle, that's where my next question is: what is the role, or what is the action of allies? How can we support this initiative as we think of building it further and help grow the diverse workforce, right? So how should we go forward from an execution perspective, right? We are saying the right things, but you have to execute on it.
Yeah, I think it's at three levels. Number one, the head of the organization, the leader of the organization, has to be an active spokesperson for that and has to genuinely believe in it. Because if they outsource this to somebody else and make it somebody else's responsibility, it almost always will never going to work out. Number two, you have to also then, as will be the case in an organization, pick up the right ambassadors and the right warriors to represent this. And it's not just about gender diversity, but any other such cause that the organization believes in and wishes to stand for as the normal. There will be enough and more ambassadors that will be there, and they have to then be represented and given the power and the authority to go out and speak about this as actively as you can. And third, you have to empower divisions to look at things differently from how things were in the past. A large reason of why we continue to have this conversation of gender diversity and not yet see the results of it is because nothing has really changed on the ground. To the point that you were making, Ashutosh, there is a difference between speech and execution. So you have to empower people who are on the ground executing these things to say, hey, we have the liberty and the authority and the autonomy to change things from what was done in the past. And we don't know what will work, but at least we know what didn't work. So we have to try and experiment and see what could.
Amazing, amazing. And I think you hit all the right points there, but like I just want to add, the role of an ally is a very important role in this journey, right? So I think male allies, people who can help each other, provide the support is going to be very, very important as well. Okay, we have talked and how time flies when you're talking about things which you like, Ankur. So it's been amazing. It's already 10:45. So we have a few more minutes, and I want to leave some space for questions from the audience. So people who are listening in, I think I'm at my last question, and then we will open up for Q&A. So this last thing, which is pretty much on everybody's mind right now, there's this thing, great reshuffle, great resignation, however you wanna term it. There's this energy going around the workforce to find the right place for themselves. Sometimes it's purpose driven, sometimes it's the role driven, sometimes it's compensation driven, whatever those reasons are. Now you are an expert on clear transitions in management, right? So what advice would you give to our audience on how to approach a job or a career change? How should we think about it? What are the things we should have in our kind of radar when we are going through some of those thinkings as well as doing the career change?
Yeah, I think it's decadal. In your 20s, please optimize for learning more than money, because if you do that job well, money is going to be a natural byproduct for the rest of your working life. While it's fashionable to have this FIRE approach that people talk about, financial independence, retire early, and that's become the buzzword for Gen Z. It's unnecessarily putting a lot of pressure on a lot of us to get to that economic freedom up close. You don't have to. If you enjoy your work, trust me, it will never feel like work, and you will still continue to enjoy the financial freedom. In your 30s, please optimize for the right avenues for leadership growth. You will need to be in a place where by design, you learn what it is to be not just a operator for your own skills, but also a driver of other people's output. At the end of it, everything eventually boils down to people. Everything boils down to people. And you have to understand how to work with people, because if you don't, it wouldn't matter how skilled you are. So work at places which help you become a better people manager, a better people person, in addition to the skills that you have. When you're in your 40s, just double down on whatever is it that you have got to know over the last 2 decades. That will be your strongest leverage. That will be where you will draw the most ROI for every single time unit you spend. Don't work on your weaknesses anymore, because it may be too late. Just work on your strengths. You have far more than you think, and that will then guide you towards your rest of your career.
Amazing. The 2 cents from my side, if you would allow, is I think you absolutely hit the right note there. But I would say, as people are thinking about career transitions, changing, pivoting into new careers, don't forget the role of what Ankur and I just talked about, passion, as well as the culture, right? Like those are essential dimensions when you're thinking about joining a new company or thinking about doing something different, right? Sometimes in short term, we compromise on that and it doesn't pan out, right? It will never pan out, right? So someday you will wake up very frustrated about what you are doing or where you are working, right? So keep those in center focus of every decision you're going to make. So a lot of great things, Uncle. This is amazing. I think I feel the energy on a Saturday, though I came back from Singapore on yesterday night. But like I'm feeling energy, and there's so much more we could talk, but being respectful of time. So there are 2 questions which the audience has asked, and I have those questions here, and I'll just verbatim and read it, not try and do my own thing there. So first question, Uncle. First of all, congratulations on the big success of your book. How do you stay motivated? What are the things in your life that make you manage time and energy so effectively?
There's a wonderful lady that I follow on social media by the name of Mel Robbins. Go look her up. She has brilliant pieces of advice. One of the advice that she gives, which I truly believe in, is motivation is garbage. What she says is motivation is actually the worst friend that we can all have, because it never seems to be around when we need it. And it always seems to be around when we are doing things that will necessarily not add value to our lives. So nobody ever needed motivation to sleep longer than they are sleeping, never needed motivation to eat that extra slice of pizza or drink that extra beer glass or whatever, because we suddenly look for motivation when we have to do the right things. Instead, and this is my way, I don't think I do anything to look for motivation. I just ensure that whatever I'm doing is authentically me. I'm doing something that is part of me, passionate me, intent me, capability me. And if I find myself in that zone, then I require lesser and lesser motivation to do those things, because that's just me. So if I asked you, whosoever is asking this question, hey, if you could just be yourself for the rest of your life, would you need motivation? And the answer is no, you wouldn't. You would only need motivation to become somebody else that you think you have to become. And my argument is, while that may be a journey you undertake, it could also be a journey that will be arduous and not result in success. Instead, pick up the journey where you begin to do things that are truly you, so that you don't have to rely on motivation anymore.
Beautiful, beautiful. Great answer. And you said Mel Robbins, right? That's the name you said?
Yes, Mel Robbins.
Okay. I'll definitely look her up and follow her on social media. Okay. Second question. What crossed your mind that you chose to educate people and help them not make the same mistakes that you did? What was the thought process when you started doing this?
I I have, for the longest time I know myself, loved helping people. Like that's who I truly am. I find joy in helping people. It gives me a sense of purpose, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of contentment. And what I've been doing so far is, of course, helping people who are in my immediate locus of control. When I stepped down as the CEO of Nearby in 2019, I looked at my journey of creating content on several platforms for several years, and I realized that that was such a powerful way.
Sorry, Ankur.
Hey,
So
sorry, am I back?
Yeah, you are back now, and we lost you there for a minute.
Sorry, yeah, no, I realized that my UPS went off for some reason. But the thing that I realized when I reflected upon my content journey on social media is it's such a powerful enabler. It is brilliant when you think about it. I'm sitting here in Faridabad, one part of the country. All of you are listening to me from wherever you are. Ashutosh is connected from somewhere. The LinkedIn team is connected from somewhere. It is magical that all of this is possible. And we don't give it enough respect, but it is truly a miracle. So I was very clear then that, hey, if this is the era we're living in, it'll be unfortunate and such a pity if we don't use this to what I would love to do, and that is help people. So what I'm doing right now is just picking up what I've been doing for the longest time that I know myself, helping people, but now doing it at a scale that I could never have imagined and done by myself.
Amazing, amazing. Wow, I think that's from a question perspective, Ankur, that those are the two questions, and we are also roughly 5 minutes away from the scheduled close of this. But this is amazing. As I said earlier, I felt so much energy and the things which we touch and the things which you shared, right from the role of a passion and a purpose, how to think about a career in a non-linear way, things which are important currently, how to build a brand. And I think one of the biggest things I could sense from the talk we had is do things which brings out your own self in the forefront. Don't do things which others don't follow others for the heck of it, right? So remain your true self. So I think some really valuable lessons for the people who are listening into it. So once again, amazing journey you have, Ankur. I mean, I think all of us kind of dream about that someday. We will have our own journey in a meaningful way. I won't say the similar journey because everybody is different, but meaningful journey driven by purpose, driven by helping people, driven by creating value for the society, right? So once again, thank you so much for spending the time today and on a Saturday, but hopefully the listeners of this fireside chat are inspired and as they go through their sessions this day two, they keep some of these valuable lessons in their mind, right? So gratitude from everybody at LinkedIn Ankur. Thank you so much for sparing the time today and being part of this event.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for having me. Thank you to the entire LinkedIn team and especially you at the helm of it from an India perspective. I've had such a wonderful journey on LinkedIn, and I have to thank you all for everything that you do because frankly, and I'm not saying this because you're in front of me, so much of who I am today is attributed to the benefits that I drew from LinkedIn as a platform that I'll forever remain mega supporter, someone who's always rooting for your success. And I'm glad that I got the opportunity to speak to you and to the entire audience today. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Fantastic. Yeah, enjoy. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Ankur. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.